royal food served on the grandest tables is so much more than just a meal. Historically, these extravagant dishes were created to represent power. They also set fashions. Nowadays, royal food is all about showcasing the best of British. In celebration of royal food,
we know it's the Queen's recipe because we've got it in our own hand.
From the present and the past,
that is proper regal.
We recreate old family favourites.
Now, the Queen Mother had this really wicked trick with these.
What a mess.
We sample royal eating al fresco.
Oh, wow.
That is what you want.
And revisit the most extravagant times.
Pheasant, stag, turkey, salmon, oysters and turbot dressed in a lobster champagne sauce.
Unbelievable.
This is Royal Recipes.
Hello, I'm Michael Buerk and welcome to Royal Recipes. This is Audley End, one of Britain's finest stately homes, built in the style of a royal palace and once owned by a king. In the splendour of the gardens, halls and kitchen of this grandest of country houses, we'll be recreating the food served at the highest royal tables. And it all starts here with this gem, a royal kitchen maid's cookbook, the only surviving recipe book of its kind in the Royal Archive. This is an exact copy of the original, which is kept at Windsor Castle. Inside, the recipes of Mildred Nichols, who worked at Buckingham Palace in the early 1900s. And for the first time in over 100 years, we'll be bringing these recipes back to life. This time, dishes cooked for royal children throughout history. Today in the Royal Recipes kitchen, Chef Paul Ainsworth cooks a royal nursery favourite, cottage pie. Makes me feel like a child again. And it takes a lot to do that, I tell you.
Fantastic.
Historian Annie Gray tours the Grand Wendy house, where Victoria and Albert's children learnt to cook.
The children, they would come down to Swiss Cottage every day and cook, and sometimes their mother and her ladies would join them, eating whatever they'd prepared.
And former royal chef Darren McGrady cooks banana flan. Perfect for the Prince's school holidays.
We always knew when Prince William and Prince Harry were going to be home because Princess Diana would write banana flan on the menu.
In the magnificence of the Victorian kitchen wing, we start with the nursery food, guaranteed to keep any young royal happy.
This is the historic kitchen, and this is the very modern Michelin-starred chef Paul Ainsworth. Kids stuff today, Paul. Royal children's food. What are you going to do for us?
Well, we're going to do a beautiful cottage pie.
Cottage pie?
Yeah.
That is supposed to be Prince William's favourite, or at least was when he was a child.
So. Yeah, absolutely. And I love cottage pie. So here we have, Michael, which is really important, the base. OK, so we've got carrots, onions, leek, celery. Cut up to about the sort of size of your small fingernail.
You've got a Ponzi name for that, haven't you?
Mirepoix.
Mirepoix.
Mirepoix. So we've got some garlic in there grated, and we're just going to add some thyme as well. So we're just going to get the thyme in there, which is beautiful.
That's really herby, isn't it?
So got our delicious vegetables, garlic, thyme. OK, we're going to add a little pinch of cracked black pepper.
Yep.
Which is delicious, and a little bit of seasoning at this stage. That seasoning's going to really bring out that flavour of the vegetables.
Yeah.
Next, we've got our mushroom ketchup.
Have
a see. It's delicious stuff.
It does smell like Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very similar. Yeah. Very similar. So a nice glug of that. Now we turn up the heat. We've got that in there, and we're just going to reduce that down, Michael. While that's reducing, something that's really old-fashioned is browning the flour.
Oh,
OK? So you've seen flour go into the base of things, so to kind of thicken it and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of flour you see going into recipes these days is just the white flour chucked in. By browning it, you're toasting it. So if you just smell, you get that lovely, wonderful toasted flavour. But also, as well, we're making a dark sauce, so we're kind of halfway there, all right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to add in our flour. And that's just going to mix with those vegetables and that lovely reduced mushroom ketchup. And that's the base. That's our sauce thickener. Real sort of classical cooking here. Now you see how all those lovely flavours have come together, and now it's just kind of made. Now this is what we call like a roux, basically. Yeah. Now we add in our lovely browned mince, OK? This is beef shin.
Yeah, because this is cottage pie.
Absolutely.
If it was shepherd's pie, it'd be lamb.
Yeah, and we're using the shin, full of flavour.
Oh, lots of flavour.
Minced down, and that's just been, again, roasted down, so we've rendered that fat off.
Yep.
In we go, like so.
Yeah.
OK?
Yeah. The royal children, of course, at least in the past, never used to eat with their parents, did they? They ate in the nursery with the governess.
Right, OK,
Yeah. Certainly Anne and Charles used to have tea, I think, at 4:30 and supper at 7 o'clock. You know, things like sausages and baked beans and fruit and custard
a hard
and things.
life, doesn't it?
Well, a lot of royals in the past, I think, have loved nursery food all their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, now we're adding in our beef stock.
Yeah.
And go easy, don't drown it, and just covering like that, all right? Because we want that. We
don't want it too sloppy.
We don't, and we want it to thicken nicely, and we want that really lovely flavour coming through from the mince, our vegetables, the garlic, the thyme, and so on.
So even though it's it's children's food in a sense, it's nursery food, it's not bland, is it?
It's not at all. Not when you make it like this. Okay, little taste.
Yep.
Before it goes into the oven, checking for seasoning.
Yeah.
And if it needs a little bit more of the mushroom ketchup, that gives a wonderful acidity and savouriness. Seasoning, because at that point, season food through the stages, not just at the end when it's on the table. You shouldn't need salt and pepper when it's on the table if you've cooked properly. So this one's going to go into the oven.
Yep.
And here we have a mix that's come out the oven. Look at that. All right? And that is just rich, reduced.
Yep.
And by toasting that flour, it's become nice and dark. So we're going to transfer this now into our pot. So just like so. Stand back. I wouldn't want to splash your jumper, Michael. In we go. Okay.
You got the one.
Right. You can have one of mine.
No, thank you. No, this is Prince William's favourite, or was Prince William's favourite.
Yeah.
Some of the other royals, when they were children, had really quite, I was about to say common taste. Princess Anne apparently used to love having fish and chips, traditional style, out of a newspaper, which
Right,
God,
okay.
do have
Well, that's the only way to have fish and chips. Something nostalgic about that. Right, mashed potato. Okay. So
Any
we've
tricks
got
with the mashed potato?
mashed
It looks
potato.
super smooth.
Using a potato like a Desiree or King Edward's potatoes, just a really good mashing potato.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're just gonna we're not doing it in a piping bag, we're not getting fancy with it, we're just spooning
Sloshing it on.
Yeah, sloshing it on, like that. So, because you know what I love is when it comes up the sides and it boils over a bit and you've got the potato mixes with that lovely mince mix. Okay.
Wow.
So, right, okay?
Yep.
So you see we've got it like that.
Now you're going to smooth it out a bit?
Yeah, we're just going to take our fork, and this here, there's a reason for this, right? And my dad used to do this. And now I see why. Smooth it over like that, and you see where we're making the lines?
Yeah.
They're all now those individual lines, they catch under the grill.
And they get crusty.
And that's what gets crusty. If you just didn't do that, you wouldn't get those spiky, crispy bits, which are delicious. So we're finishing it with a wonderful English cheese, very much like Parmesan, called Buerk's. Absolutely delicious, beautiful British cheese. Right, cheese on, and that is ready for the oven. Okay, so half an hour at about 180 degrees, and then just finish under the grill. So you get all those lovely crispy bits. The cheese will be bubbling, beautiful.
Little crusty brown bits.
I've got one out there. Would you mind getting it for me?
This is really, really heavy. Yeah, and it smells sensational.
That is sensational, isn't it? Let's dish up.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
dish up.
Don't hold
Wow.
back.
Wow. Right. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Gonna go in like that.
Yeah. Oh, that looks
And
good.
then just some more of that beautiful, rich mix.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Absolutely. This is proper comfort food.
you see what Prince William means now.
And you got that crispy cheese on top.
Yep.
And just a little extra. What do you do at home? Just a bit more of it. Like that. I can't get enough of the cheese. Absolutely delicious. There we are, Michael.
Okay.
Cottage pie
Give me a fork.
for you.
The gold one.
Yes, of course.
There's a plastic one
I've got
there
the plastic one here, yeah.
for you. Okay, here we go. I'm going to have a bit of both.
Yeah.
There we go. Some of your cheese.
Yeah.
That's right. I didn't get any...
Nicely seasoned as well.
Yeah.
You know, that, with the mushroom ketchup.
Yeah.
And it's the cheese, beautiful soft potatoes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
This is real... well, it's nursery food, but... It takes me back.
If that's nursery food, then I love nursery food.
Makes me feel like a child again. And it takes a lot to do that, I tell you.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Here we go.
A comforting taste of childhood. Historically, royal children have always had their own chefs, and some even had their very own kitchen to play in. Historian Dr. Annie Gray is at Osborne House, where one royal couple created a pint-sized paradise to give their 9 children a taste of real rather than royal life.
Victorian children were supposed to be seen and not heard. That's if they survived childhood at all, which was by no means a given. So you might be forgiven for thinking that Victoria's children didn't have the most fun time. But here, in the grounds of Victoria and Albert's private residence at Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, deep in the woods, lurks something to help change your mind.
And this is it, a traditional wooden Swiss cottage, commissioned by Victoria and Albert and built in 1854. This idyllic childhood retreat was the ultimate playhouse, and a practical one at that, a place for the children to learn how to grow food as well as cook it.
In 1850, Victoria and Albert had a set of vegetable gardens constructed for the royal children. Here they used to come and use their miniature wheelbarrows and miniature sets of tools to grow fruit and vegetables, which they then sold on to their father, Prince Albert, at market price. They were helped by the caretaker here, Mr. Warne. The children look back as adults on their gardens very, very fondly, and it's clear that they absolutely loved coming here, playing in the gardens, growing everything and eating everything as well. These gardens really were a little slice of paradise.
The Swiss cottage style was very fashionable in mid-19th century gardens, but this house was all about the children and was even built to 3/4 scale.
The kitchen here was kitted out by all the finest suppliers, the same people that supplied the copper and the iron and the wood to Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle kitchens as well. So why did the royal children learn to cook? Clearly, they were never going to have to actually cook for themselves. They were expected to marry into the royal families of Europe, or perhaps the aristocracy. But that wasn't the point. Not only was this an idealised version of the childhood that Victoria never had, but the cooking and the gardening and the playing with toy shops all had a purpose. It kept the children grounded in reality, and it made sure that when they were controlling servants of their own, they would know what should be going on inside the kitchens and the gardens that they ruled over, so that they could better control their own servants.
The idea of royal domestic training was very unusual at the time, but Victoria and Albert were determined to keep the children in touch with reality.
By the late 1850s, the children had settled into a fairly set routine. They would come down to Swiss Cottage every day and cook either tea or lunch, and sometimes their mother and her ladies would join them, eating whatever they prepared. For birthday parties, the house would be decked out with bunting, and they'd cook birthday cakes for each other and celebrate. There's remarkably little record of what was actually cooked here. A few mentions in journals and diaries. Something, for example, like a simple sponge cake. In this case, the original Victoria sandwich. Today, we think of a Victoria sponge sandwich as one large, usually round cake, chopped in two, spread with raspberry or strawberry jam, and then a layer of cream.
But the original Victoria sponge was more like a finger sandwich, made of fatless sponge cut up to look like white bread, and spread with jam made from fruit from the children's own garden.
The children were usually cooking for each other, but their mother would come down quite a lot and share a tea with them, or perhaps a luncheon.
Sometimes even visitors to Osborne House would be invited down to the cottage for tea, served by the princes and princesses in their very own dining room.
And you can imagine the Queen and her ladies-in-waiting all sitting around this table, waiting to be served by the royal children, the produce, the fruits of whatever they cooked downstairs. It's really quite special. Later on, after the children grew up and got married and left, sometimes the grandchildren would come and cook here as well, and Victoria was very close to a lot of her grandchildren. But increasingly, this room was used by Victoria herself to come and sit and deal with her correspondence. And as time went on, the Swiss cottage became more of a retreat for the Queen than it did a playhouse for the children. But it never lost that special function. It never lost that sense that it was something really quite special. And I think when you stand here, you can still feel that in the atmosphere.
Food first eaten in childhood can have a long-lasting impact, and it was as a child that the present Queen is said to have developed some very particular taste.
Kippers aren't the first thing that comes to mind as nursery food. But according to Buckingham Palace staff at the time, the Queen developed her love for kippers as a child. She was playing at Windsor Castle with her sister, Princess Margaret, where she caught the aroma of kippers coming from the royal kitchens, and she's loved them ever since. This is a royal dish, kipper puree. Rather like gentleman's relish. You have it on toast. A favourite with royals, adults and children alike. That's pretty nice.
Quite an old-fashioned word, that, puree. We'd probably know that now as pâté.
Yeah.
Quite coarse, yeah.
Really nice. And kippers have been in favour with the royal family, haven't they?
Yes.
All along. Even when kippers have slightly fell out of favour with the rest of us, around about the 70s or 1980s. Which is a shame, really, isn't it?
It is. I think they're quite strong. Certainly the ones that the royals have, the Manx kipper, are superior. They're absolutely delicious.
I mean, the Queen apparently has kippers delivered on a weekly basis from the Isle of Man, Manx kippers.
Absolutely. And I think it's sometimes maybe the smell when they're cooking. There's a lot of bones to them as well, stuff. But
shame, because they're relatively cheap, they're healthy, they're versatile. You've got this.
Full of omega-3, nice and oily. They are a very healthy fish.
You've got the puree, which is nice. You can have it in kedgeree.
Yes.
Classic is smoked haddock, but with kippers, really interesting twist to it. OK, so what are you going to do with kippers?
We are going to make a beautiful kipper starter.
Not a kipper starter.
That as well.
Yeah.
Right, but kipper starter.
OK.
And we're going to use these wonderful Manx kippers. So if you just see, they're basically brined, OK, and then smoked. So they're absolutely delicious.
They're very
the
succulent.
Quality of the fillets. Oh, they're really juicy and succulent. Absolutely gorgeous. Right, it's a very simple dish. I've just changed it slightly just to kind of get more flavour into it than the sort of original recipe. So here we've got some leeks. Now, rather than just boiling those in water, I've just sweated them down in butter. So cook them without colour in butter, little pinch of seasoning with the lid on. So all that flavour stays in the leek and not into the water.
Looks really soft.
Absolutely. Rather than just putting raw onion in there, I've sliced the onion nice and thin and I've just salted it. And that just kind of removes some of the water and just breaks the onion down a little bit so it's not quite so raw. Our dressing, we're going to use some balsamic vinegar.
Yep.
OK, so we're just going to have a little splasher. And this is like making a basic dressing. You can see a really good quality vinegar, nice and thick.
This is a more recent recipe, in fact, isn't it? A royal recipe. In fact, it first seemed to emerge in a cookbook that was published in honour of the Queen Mother.
Right, OK.
Yeah. So it must have been one of her favourites, I suppose.
Yeah. So you can see straight away, because we had that lovely thick balsamic vinegar, it goes thick straight away as soon as we emulsify the oil.
Yeah.
OK. Now, like any dressing, you're sort of looking at a ratio like this of 2 to 1. All right, and by that I mean sort of 2 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. And it's basically the fat cutting against the vinegar.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. It's in that conflict that
Absolutely.
you get it. Yeah.
Little bit of salt. OK, now we're going to add in a spoonful of our buttered leeks.
Yeah.
And these are gorgeous because they're nice and soft, wonderful flavour coming from the leek.
Yeah.
Our raw onion. It's quite a fascinating recipe, this, very unusual. But just by salting it, that onion's now is not too strong. Now just mix that together.
Yeah. Why do you think kippers fell out of fashion? I suppose you smoked the fish because, you know, to preserve it, and then when frozen fish came in, people thought, oh, that's a bit easier.
I think it's that. I think it's a manner of things. I think it's the bone, sometimes the work. It is quite a strong tasting fish.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put some fresh parsley in there, which goes absolutely beautiful with this mix.
Yeah.
Like that. So we'll just put some fresh parsley. Then because we got that lovely onion and leek in there, we're going to put some chive in there just to kind of so it all marries together.
Yeah.
So we're just going to finely chop some chives.
Not normally kippers are a favourite of children, so it's rather surprising in a way that it has been a favourite of several of the royal children down the generations.
Yeah, and I think like you said earlier as well, what's great about it is the health benefits.
Yeah.
So we've got our got our kipper in there. Now we just bring that mix. Absolutely delicious. Okay, now we're going to come over to our toast. So you see, it's like a nice kind of stiff mix.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cross between a salsa and this sort of almost like a salsa type pate.
So you're putting it on a sourdough
yeah, no,
toast
just
then,
a nice
which is
piece
pretty ideal, isn't it?
Nice piece of crispy sourdough like that. Just finish the last spoonful on there. That lovely toast. Let's taste.
Yes, bring it over.
Okay.
Now I'll make you some room.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I've got my golden fork. My trademark.
Let me cut you a piece. All right. Patience. Patience. There we are.
Not my... I haven't got a mouth that big. Oh, come on, I'm just going to get at it. There we go. Don't look.
Beautiful. That is really delicious. When I read this recipe, I had my reservations and stuff, but it so works. I do think it's good just to take the edge off of those onions by salting them slightly.
Yep.
Soft leeks, that lovely acidity with the balsamic, beautiful fresh herbs.
And a little bit of sweetness there as
It
well,
is,
somehow.
which is the balsamic.
Oh, brilliant.
It's delicious.
Kipper starter. The Queen Mother's starter.
Fantastic.
One to remember her with.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Queen is not the only royal with a love for these smoked herrings. Her daughter also got a taste for kippers during a visit to Yorkshire. On the North Yorkshire coast is the seaside town of Whitby. It has a long history as a fishing port. And it's no surprise that one of the best known and oldest businesses in the town is Fortune's Kippers. Fortune's has been run by the same family for 140 years. It's the last surviving kipper enterprise in Whitby.
Can I have 2 pounds of kippers, sweetheart, please?
Wrap together.
Please, if you don't mind. Thank you.
There's no shortage of customers, and they're not all locals.
Cute. Hi.
When the aroma of the kippers wafted under the nose of the Princess Royal, she couldn't resist, as owner Barry Brown recalls.
Princess Anne was visiting Whitby a number of years ago, and during a visit she'd sent her lady-in-waiting for kippers. Didn't think a lot more about it until the letter came saying, thank you.
And that letter has been guarded closely by Barry and his brother Derek ever since.
It's nice, when you get acknowledged like that. 7th of April 1998. Dear Mr. Barry and Mr. Derek, Princess Royal has asked me to write and thank you for the kippers. They smelt delicious and the Princess looks forward to eating such a special treat from Whitby. They will remind her of a most enjoyable but rather brief visit to the town. Her Royal Highness sends you her best wishes for your continued success. Yours sincerely, Caroline Nahy, I think it is, Lady-in-Waiting to Her Royal Highness Princess Royal. Nice.
Up until the 1970s, a huge amount of herring were landed at Whitby. But these days, Fortunes buy theirs frozen from the North Atlantic. From here on, everything is done by hand. The first task is splitting and gutting the fish.
These methods are unchanged. We're 5th generation doing this in the family, and we were taught to split herrings when we were young, very young. Up here and with our grandparents and that. You were watching, you're learning, then eventually you got a little go at it and you earned a bit of pocket money at it.
These skills are now second nature to Barry and his brother.
Everything's done simply by eye and by touch. Once these herring have been cut and washed, they're brined the saltwater solution for about 40 minutes. Because this is part of the curing process. It's a way of life, it's what you do.
It was Barry and Derek's great-great-grandfather who set up the business, and the secrets of the smokehouse have been passed down through the family.
This has been used for about almost 100 years. We'll start the first fires, which are like a drying fire, really, just to set the fish off a bit. Probably an hour and a half's fire, something like that. And then we'll go from there on in and see what we need after that.
The kippers are hung on balks, and the fires are made up of shavings of oak and beech on top of a layer of softwood. The fish are left to smoke for 20 hours.
It will be a kipper once it comes out of the smokehouse. Goes in as a herring and comes out as a kipper.
Once they turn golden brown, the kippers are ready for sale.
Maybe do 500-600 herring. Maybe 3 times a week, 3-4 times a week. We have regulars. It's mainly visitors at town that come up for them. But it's always steady away now all year round. Anybody comes to Whitby, when he'll say, "I'll bring me some kippers back."
This is a business which knows exactly how to keep its customers happy, whoever they are.
It's great to get the feedback. You know, customer satisfaction is as good as anything, really.
I'm here in the library of the house with Ingrid Seward of Majesty magazine and author of Royal Childhood. So, how do they eat?
They always eat in the nursery. Now, the nursery is like the fiefdom of nanny and the nursery footman, and they eat at precisely 4:30 for tea, which is half an hour before the grown-ups, and then they have supper at 7 o'clock, and they have to be all bathed and washed and in their night clothes in time for that.
But always separate from the parents?
Well, they only eat with their parents when they can sit up straight, not fidget and hold a knife and fork properly. But Prince Charles thought this was a bit archaic and he'd try something else, so he requested that Prince William should be brought down to have breakfast with him one day. Now, William was still in a high chair, and William got hold of an egg, and instead of eating it, he just dropped it on the floor. And Prince Charles said, "I don't think we'll be repeating this experiment."
Who decides what they eat? Is it the nanny, is it the chef, or is it the parents?
It's a combination of all three. Nanny and the chef often have a little contretemps, and there was one particular chef who didn't like Nanny Lightbody, who was the nanny for Charles and Anne, and she would ring down every day and say, "I think we'll have liver for lunch." And the chef would say, "Oh, yes, we'll have liver." Then Nanny said, "No, I think we'll have chicken." So every day she changed it. So in the end, the chef sort of double thought what Nanny was going to say, and when she said, "We'll have chicken," they then produce liver. And yeah, it's just one of those stupid little things.
So it sounds like for royal children, they almost eat in an ordinary way, not grand at all.
Well, it's not grand, but it isn't that ordinary either. On one occasion, when Charles was a little bit older, he was going to go to a custard pie party. I don't think people have those anymore. Anyway, so the chef cooked all this beautiful custard pies, but they weren't set solid. And when he arrived at the party and got the vats of custard out of the back, they were still a bit wobbly. He didn't realise that. So anyhow, when Charles came to throw his custard pies, they were still wet inside, and they had to have the whole room redecorated. That's sort of crazy. They love throwing things. Love throwing food.
Ingrid, thanks.
As the royal children got a little older, the palace chefs developed a large repertoire of childhood favourites. Darren McGrady spent more than 15 years cooking for the royal family. 4 of those cooking for Diana and the boys at Kensington Palace, where a popular dish was banana flan.
We always knew when Prince William and Prince Harry were going to be home because Princess Diana would write banana flan on the menu. I first made it at Buckingham Palace for the Queen, but whenever Prince William and Harry were home, we always used to make banana flan. So to make the pastry, the first part of the dish, got a food processor, and I'm going to add some flour and some sugar, and then butter. If the butter's really chilled, the pastry you can start rolling straight away, and then a little bit of vanilla. We don't want to overbeat it, because if we do, we just tighten the mixture, and then into that we can add an egg, and then mix that in. And as you can see, all this pastry comes together then. If your butter's really soft, then you're going to put this in the refrigerator now for about an hour to let it set up. But this seems firm enough for me to roll out. And we want it nice and thin, not too thick. So once it's rolled out, fold it back onto the rolling pin and then over your dish. The secret here is actually to lift and push with your finger. You go around the dish and get that crease right in the bottom of the dish. Then you go across the top with the rolling pin and all the excess dough comes off. Then just press back on any overlapping pastry and gives us a professional pie shell fit for a queen. Then it goes onto a baking tray and we have to blind bake it. We take a little bit of parchment paper, put into the bottom of our pastry ring. There we go. We have to put some weights, and we're using ceramic baking beans. If you don't have these at home, you can use rice.
The pastry takes 15 minutes at 180 degrees. The next step is making the custardy, creamy filling.
For the pastry cream, I'm going to start off with some eggs, and I use 5 yolks and 1 whole egg. Then I need to boil some milk and cream. And while that's boiling, into my bowl, I'm going to put some sugar, some corn flour, a little vanilla, and a pinch of salt. And then whisk all those together. Once the milk and the cream comes to the boil, I can just pour that now straight onto my egg mixture. Once it's all mixed in, it goes back into the pan on the stove. And you just carry on whisking this until it all starts to thicken up. Prince William loved banana flan. Whenever he came home from school, he'd always request banana flan. And you can see now we have this gorgeous pastry cream. It goes into a bowl, a nice clean bowl, and then a little bit of greaseproof paper over the top to stop a skin forming. Then into the refrigerator to set and cool down. Once the pastry cream's made, we can then check on the flan. It should be a nice golden brown now. Look at that, beautiful. Carefully lift the parchment paper up. So now it just needs to go back in the oven just to harden up that base for about 5 minutes.
Cooking such a popular pud in Kensington Palace presented Darren with occasional problems. The bananas would run out.
You could always be sure that when I was making it and I'd get to this stage and the next part was actually slicing the bananas, Princess Diana would walk into the kitchen and chat and then just take one of the bananas and start eating it. And then the boys would come in too, and then they'd take a banana each and start eating it too. And I got like 1 banana and like hopefully I've got more in the pantry. The pastry's been in for a further 5 minutes. It should be ready now. While the flan's cooling, we can move on to the next stage, and that is to make the apricot jam. I'm going to heat the jam until it softens slightly, and that'll make it much easier to spread. And then I can get my pastry cream. So the pastry cream has just cooled nicely, and all I need to do is just stir that. That smells so good. And then pour this into my flan and spread it nice and evenly. So once the jam started to melt, the next thing is slicing the bananas. Then the bananas we can arrange neatly and stack them and overlap them to make it look pretty. I can take my jam and brush over the top. It makes a beautiful sweet glaze, but at the same time stops the bananas from going brown. So once the jam is on there, covering all the bananas, that is what we're looking for. That is the banana flan that Prince William loved so much. A beautiful, crisp pastry tart shell, creamy, soft, smooth pastry cream underneath, sliced bananas and apricot jam, a little cream on top. The perfect dessert.
Over 100 years earlier at Buckingham Palace, kitchen maid Mildred Nichols would have prepared tea and puddings for the children of George V and Queen Mary, as well as cakes such as Swiss roll.
That banana flan must have kept generations of royal children happy, don't you think?
Sounded like good times to me.
It did, good times, yeah. When our Buckingham Palace kitchen maid, Mildred Nichols, was writing her recipes in this book, there were 6 children running around the palace. But that era of Edwardian extravagance was over, really, because King George V, you know, was pretty stern and austere. And Queen Mary, not to put too fine a point on it, was a bit of a penny pincher.
And it reflects in this recipe. We're making Swiss roll today, but usually you would make the base, the sponge, with flour. And we're using breadcrumbs.
Straight out of Mildred's recipe.
Straight out of Mildred's recipe.
With breadcrumbs. Have you ever used breadcrumbs in Swiss roll?
Never in Swiss roll. Quite clever, though. I know you like you say the penny pinching, but it's
But it was. I mean, that was the idea, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, Queen Mary did not want any bits of leftover bread to go to waste.
Sure, and to use
idea.
it up in Swiss roll. So let's taste. It might actually be really nice. Here it goes.
On you go.
Right. So what we've got in here is basically eggs and sugar, and we've just whisked them up, and we're just going to turn that back on.
Yeah.
And this is called a sabayon.
Sabayon.
A sabayon. So it's basically the sugar and the eggs are just whisked till they got nice and thick and fluffy. Yeah. Now we're going to add in our breadcrumb, and this is basically like our kind of cake dough. So it's very, very simple. Just going to turn that up and just basically whisk it all in.
But it must be a bit of difference having breadcrumbs rather than flour, surely.
Yeah.
Breadcrumbs must be coarser.
Absolutely, and I think there'll be a textural difference as well, because as you can see, you've got those kind of grains of the breadcrumb in. So we're just going to take that out of there, Michael. Okay. Remove the whisk.
Not that I suppose King George V would have noticed. He was very, very austere in his taste. He used to have thin soup at 11 o'clock.
Thin soup at 11 o'clock.
And the thing he really liked was mashed potatoes, apparently.
And did they have to have lumps in or no lumps?
Probably. And apple dumplings was the only dessert he really liked.
Apple dumplings. Yeah. Lovely. Right, so again, we're just putting the mix right into the corners. Yeah. We don't want any air. Right. So we're just getting all of that mix. So you can see, quite simple. Just breadcrumbs, the sugar and the eggs whisked.
This wouldn't have stretched Mildred too far, would it?
No, I don't think so. So just into the corners.
Yeah.
Right. And the important thing, Michael, is just to make sure that there's no air in the mixture. So just a gentle tap. As you can see, you've got those little air pockets. And the reason for that is so you don't get holes in the sponge. Like that. Now, if I could send you to the scullery...
That's my natural role.
If you could put that in the oven, it's 10 minutes, 200 degrees, and you know the drill.
Yes, Chef.
Can you bring me back the other one that's done? Thank you.
OK, Chef.
You OK, Michael?
Yeah, I'll be with you in a minute, Chef. It's hot, though. Here we go.
Look at that.
It looks nice, doesn't it?
It does, and it smells quite nice.
Whether it tastes nice...
Fantastic.
Let's see. What next?
So now we've got our sponge made. This is the next kind of important thing. You know that lovely kind of almost crispy texture around the outside of the Swiss roll, the sugar? So we're just going to sprinkle our sugar
out of your way.
All over the tea towel. And we want to be quite liberal with it because we want... And it's important while it's warm. Sorry, is it on your shoes?
You're frosting my trousers. There we go.
That's it, all over like this. And while it's warm, Michael, the sugar will stick.
So that's why you've got to do it while it's warm, eh?
So now, turn her over, like that. And just gently, you've got to work quite quickly as well. Just peel off underneath like that. Okay? Just like that. And it's so important to do this while it's warm. There we go. Okay.
Now, this is Swiss roll with breadcrumbs, eh?
Absolutely.
Rather than flour.
Now, you want to get a really tight roll, okay? But don't get the cloth trapped in the middle, which I know sounds obvious, but is not as easy as you think. So just keep going over till you've got your first roll, like this. And the reason you're doing it warm is so that you get the fold. Now, can you see the sugar coating it? Yeah. Now go all the way over, like that.
It would be terribly easy to get the cloth trapped.
Yeah, and that's why you've got to keep it there. Absolutely. Now the whole idea now is leave that there.
Yeah.
And that's basically going to set. So it's almost a bit muscle memory, if you like.
Muscle memory.
So we're just gonna
It only
move that.
rolls one way, like snails.
Absolutely, yeah. So we want
Snail
it,
shells, yeah.
we want it to cool.
Yep.
So we get this, like so. Now we pull that cloth back.
Yeah.
Now that's cooled down. See that lovely sugar crust? Now you can start to see the whole Swiss roll taking shape.
Yep.
And now, don't worry
it
about
wants
it.
to curl back
It
because
does want to curl back.
because of
but
its
don't-
muscle memory.
Because of
yeah.
its muscle memory. You like that word, don't you? Hey?
You are.
You're learning so much from me, aren't
Such
you?
a Ponzi
Not just,
chef,
not
you
just the cooking.
Muscle memory.
Right.
It's a Swiss roll.
Right.
Now, what's this?
So this is Mildred's actual recipe of creme patisserie. So basically a really thick custard used in things like Swiss rolls, the base of soufflés.
Yeah.
Okay? So...
And how different is it from just ordinary custard?
No different at all, actually.
right,
This is
right.
just
Yes.
egg yolks, sugar, vanilla, milk, and then some flour to thicken it.
Just one of your fancy names, eh?
Yeah. Right. Be quite liberal with it because, like I say, I'm still very optimistic about the breadcrumb. So I want to make sure we've got plenty of custard.
Well, just in case it doesn't feel cakey and
Yeah,
fancy
absolutely.
enough with the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. So right over like this, very liberal.
Because I don't think Queen Mary, was that much of a foodie.
Now, one of my favourites, and also Mildred as well, rhubarb jam. Absolutely delicious. And who doesn't like rhubarb and custard?
Rhubarb and custard, that's actually
Yeah.
a bit nursery
That was
foodish,
why I
isn't it,
wanted
in
to
itself?
make it. Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to make it a bit different, rather than it being the strawberry. Like,
Yeah.
because for me, rhubarb and custard.
Yeah, Mildred would have done it with strawberry, wouldn't
Yes,
she?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Right, and then same again, keeping the tea towel out.
Yeah.
And then just roll it back up. This bit
should be easier, shouldn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely, because you've got the muscle memory.
You've got the muscle memory, yeah. Now,
Right.
why do it with the tea towel, not just now? Just roll it with your hands.
Because I want to keep it nice and tight, Michael.
All right.
Like that. Like-
It's squeezing out at the end.
Absolutely, and for me, it has to be filled up. Otherwise, well, can you see down here? Look
Yeah,
at this.
yeah.
Okay. Now, just with a palette knife, we'll just get that because we don't want to waste. Push that like that. So on the ends.
So that's Mildred's Swiss roll. It's not Swiss, by the way, or at least I don't think it's Swiss. There's no reason to believe it actually comes from Switzerland.
Now, would you like a slice?
Oh, I think I could force one down.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, I'll have the one on the end with all the excess stuff.
Yeah.
I'll get myself a fork.
Yeah. Get yourself a fork.
Right.
There we are. Get stuck in.
I will.
How's that?
It's the crust of the sugar that's nice, and the cream and the rhubarb. You can see children would love it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think what makes it nice is the rhubarb jam, that lovely thick custard.
Yeah.
And actually, do you know what? With the breadcrumbs, it is a great way of using using breadcrumbs up. Everyone has bread at home that they throw away. And that's better than feeding it to the ducks, isn't it? Yeah.
Penny pinching royals, eh?
Delicious.
Okay, that's it from our celebration of cooking for royal children. See you next time.